Hi guys, Aceface back for Twisted Dice, and I'm back with another Tyranid Tactics video. And today I'm going to do the next part of my kind of overview of the Tyranid Codex in 9th edition, may I stress, because this is obviously not a new book, and hopefully we'll get a new one in not too long. But for now, we've got to deal with this, and a lot of 9th edition rules, missions, stuff like that change the way we look at this. And I've been looking through all the different data slates again, and finding a lot more depth in there than maybe I did previously. So hopefully if you're a newer player, you're returning to the faction, or you just want a different take on some of these units, this might be useful. If you do like it, do hit a big old thumbs up and a like. And consider subscribing to the channel. We are almost at 10,000 subscribers, fast approaching it, and when we do get there, we have got an amazing prize. All the details are down in the description below. If you want to become a patron, they're also down there as well. Those guys are mega bosses. We love you so much, so thank you again. But anyway, let's jump into this video and let's talk a little bit about the elites we're going to start with. So in the last video I covered the HQs and the troops. If you want to see that, there will be a kind of a slot up there, or it'll be down in the description or something or other. So let's talk about these, and I'm not going to talk in huge details. I'm going to just talk a little bit overview and where they might fit in, what they might work with. So let's start off with the Tyranid Guard. Now the Tyranid Guard, they're actually not too bad. So they've been a bit of a forgotten unit over the last couple of editions, but they're actually okay now. And the reason why they're okay now is because they have a free up save, they're toughness 5 with 3 wounds. So from a resilience point of view, they're quite resilient. So what you can do is use these very much in the control element within the cap strategy. And if you don't know what the cap strategy is, I'll put links for those videos in the description below. But basically these guys, very good at sitting in the middle of the board, being quite difficult to move and taking those key objectives. They're small, they're infantry, they tick a lot of the boxes, so they can provide quite a lot of utility there. They're obviously good at defending your Hive Tyrants, and more importantly Swarm Lord. So if you're playing a Swarm Lord list, maybe they kind of fit into there as well. And you've got the ability to gear these up and kit these up with different kind of combat biomorphs or abilities. So they're actually quite good. Points wise, you know, they're worth considering. They're not as terrible as they used to be, and definitely not one to write off. I quite like them. I think there's some utility there. They don't tend to quite make it into most of my lists, but I don't think they're bad. I think they're worth maybe considering. A fun unit. They look pretty cool, but unfortunately most people's Tyranid Guard are Hive Guard, which is what we're coming to next. So Hive Guard, controversially I would say probably are the best unit in the complete decks, and probably point for point the best Tyranid unit there is, even including Forge World data slates as well. The reality is, with our current range of abilities and stratagems, the ability for 6 of these guys to double shoot give you probably more offensive striking ability than anything else we have. The fact that they ignore cover, they're a solid AP and do a solid amount of damage, means that they are really good. That strength 8 for the guns makes them very strong, and the new smaller boards means that you put these guys relatively in the middle of the board behind cover, and they'll hit most things on the board, which makes them just super reliable. They only have a 4-up save, but we can buff that with the Blood of Bow ability to have them ignore -1 and 2 AP, which is pretty effective. So, and because they're potentially going to be in cover, they'll probably be on a 3+ save anyway. So I like these guys. They are super strong. They do have quite a big footprint, so be aware of that. When you've got 6 of these guys, you actually need quite a big bit of terrain to hide these guys behind, because they're that big. Same with putting them in terrain. It's got to be quite a big bit of terrain to be able to get 6 of these in there. So which is why you might want to consider maybe 5 or 4, because they're still a solid job for you. But they are a standout unit, and one definitely to consider. They obviously fit amazingly in a Kronos detachment, because that standing still and re-rolling 1s for these guys is just so good. It's just so good. Next up, we have the Lichter. The Lichter is a unit that has been absolutely junk for ages and ages and ages, but now has a huge amount of use and versatility. Super cheap, and very small footprint with a 3 deep strike ability built in. He fits perfectly with so many of the missions within the 9th edition champions missions things. So yeah, he fits great. He is just an amazing unit for what he does. Doesn't particularly hit particularly good in combat. He's not particularly resilient, but he's small. He's quite quick, and he can get in very small areas very well. So yeah, he's really useful. And at very little points, he's a super effective guy to have you in list, and he's very cool. So definitely consider getting yourself a Lichter. The Death Leaper used to be amazing, and I would argue that he used to be better, and I would always take the Death Leaper over the Lichter. But I think with the new missions, actually the Lichter is the better bet, because the Death Leaper paying those extra points, you're not really getting a huge amount more. Before, with him being a character, he was hard to kind of target, but now with the way that you're going to use a Lichter or a Death Leaper, he's probably not close to anything else, so he's going to be targeted anyway. So I think then the Lichter becomes a bit of a problem. Also, with that maximum of a -1 to hit, he struggles a little bit there as well. So but still a fun unit, very cool, but probably less uses for him maybe than there used to be. Then we go on to Zoanthropes. Again, very much up there with one of the strongest units in the Codex. And why are they so strong? Well, they're so strong because they can hold objectives, super reliable. They've got a great invulnerable save being 3+. They're very hard to shift. So provide that control feature extremely well, and can deliver quite a lot of pain with that psychic ability as well. So I like them. Fearless, they're not going to run anywhere. They're just great. Infantry as well, so they tick all the boxes. So I've got a whole video on them, but they're great, really strong. Then we have the Scepter. Scepter again was a unit that very much struggled, but now with its new stratagem, the ability to take strength off incoming shots, makes it potential. It's probably still too expensive and too much of investment for CPs to be really up there, but I've used him in a few lists and found him quite a lot of fun. He doesn't hit too bad in combat. He doesn't really have enough attacks. He's quite tough. He has a fairly good invulnerable save. He's okay, and he has some psychic abilities as well. So I quite like him. He's a bit of a fringe unit, but you could pop him in, have a lot of fun with him, and he also has some use as well. Synergizes quite a lot with running other big monsters. So yeah, I like him, but he's not amazing. So then we've got the Venomthrope. Now the Venomthrope is all about giving you that -1 to hit, which is still very effective. So he's good. Personally, I've always stayed clear of these guys and opted for the Venomthrope. I think now the Venomthrope's got the larger range to his -1. It's even more reason to take a Venomthrope over the Venomthropes. Obviously the Venomthropes are cheaper, but for me it's the Venomthrope every time. But still cool unit, not a bad one to consider. And if you're not running Forge World, or you don't plan to get a Venomthrope, then Venomthrope can still do some work for you. We've got the Pyrovol next, and the Pyrovol got a lot better in 9th edition. The ability to outflank quite effectively. He's cheap and cheerful. He's got a solid flamer. He can also explode when he dies as well. Can have quite a lot of fun. He's actually not too bad. Still not super strong, but definitely worth considering, whereas before he was a bit of the laughing stock of the Tyranid Codex. It's definitely quite a lot of fun now. So if you've got Pyrovols, give them a go and see how you get on. There's definitely some use and some utility for these guys. Then we've got the Haruspecs. Now you can load the Haruspecs up with some of the Blood Bow abilities to make him a little bit more effective and a little bit more scary in combat. Can be quite good at scything through, infantry. I generally find With a weapon skill of 4, he struggles a little bit. I struggle with him. I just think there's better units, but he looks cool. There's definitely ways to make him work okay, and I have looked at him more recently, and I think there's maybe more play there that just needs to be worked on. We just need to work on how you fit him in, but there's some play there, and then we're on to fast attack. So where are we at the moment? We're at 10 minutes. We will cover fast attack today because I want to do that for you. So what we've got now is we've got Gargoyles. So Gargoyles basically termagants with wings, so quicker termagants. So they still have the infantry. They have fly, which is good. They're okay. They have some use. They're good at kind of getting in your opponent's way, flying up, taking early objectives. Obviously having a deep strike built in is nice. They're okay. They probably just end up getting overshadowed by just bringing more termagants, probably. But you can have some fun with them. They're not a bad unit. We got Ravenous next. Now, I really like Ravenous. Most people hate them. The 5+ save is what probably hurts them more than anything, and the fact that they're not a synapse creature, unlike the warriors. But other than that, they're good because they've got lots of attacks. They're very, very quick. They have deep strike built in, and you can kit them out with quite a lot of shooting. So you can give them the Death Spitters, which is basically like the old style heavy bolter. Jump up, lots of shots, and pretty good in combat. I like running these guys cheap and cheerful in small units, just grab objectives, be a nuisance, come in the back of the board, score secondaries. I think there's quite a lot of flexibility and utility with these guys. I really like them, and I don't think they're terrible. The 5+ does mean that they just literally melt quite quickly, but if you've got your points from them, that's worth it because they're not that expensive. And then you've got the Redterror. The Redterror, there's not too much more. He's basically a single Ravener. He's a little bit better in combat. He's obviously a character, so he can abuse the ability not to be targeted. But again, he's a deep strike. He's a kind of almost like a Lichter kind of Death Leaper style kind of unit. He does buff the Raveners, but yeah, I struggle to fit him in a lot, to be honest. But he's okay. You think you can have fun with him. He can still do some work. And if anyone manages to get the swallow whole ability off on him, let me know in the comments below because I've never managed it. Then we've got the Mucilid Spores. So one of the cheapest ways to bring in a Spore pod just to you know, take up a slot if you're trying to build maybe a brigade detachment. And they're quite good at just blocking out space. Used to be a lot more useful than they are now, but they're okay. Spore mines, really like spore mines. I think they can be effective blockers, but I tend to prefer to use these from spare points and use the spore mine formation to bring them in for using reinforcements or create them through biovores or spore assists. That seems to be a better way for me to get your spore mines on the table. But spore mines, again, not a terrible unit, can be very, very useful in 9th edition and work quite well. So that's the end of the fast attack slots. I would also like to give a kind of honourable mention again from a Forge World unit, because we're not really covering Forge World units here particularly, but I would be wrong not to include the Democaron, who obviously has had an amazing buff in the most recent edition of the Forge World book. He now is actually super competitive and one of the best Tyranid units. Hits like an absolute train, is super quick and can work very, very well in a combat-based Tyranid army. So one to definitely look at. And I've broken down in a bit more detail in the Forge World video, which I'll put a link in the description below. So next up, we'll come in and we'll talk about the heavy support, and then we'll talk a little bit about high fleets to end up this series. But hopefully you found this useful. If you have, please do put the comments down below, let us know, give us a thumbs up, and until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye for now.